All right, so here's part 2. So this is more about like ecology, where this was more cells and body systems. So all living things need food, water, shelter, space, and sunlight. When these resources become scarce, species will compete to survive. Lack of food, water, space, sunlight, or reproduction will limit or stop a population's growth. These are called limiting factors. We talked about organisms that are best suited to their environment survive, reproduce, and pass on their genetic traits to their offspring. This is called natural selection. And remember that natural selection is not necessarily who is strongest or fastest, it's best suited to their environment. Adaptations occur as a result of natural selection. So adaptations help an organism survive in its environment. Something that happens inside of their body or something that they can't control, that's going to be a physiological, let me spell it correctly, physiological adaptation. Something that it does is a behavioral adaptation, and how it looks is structural. So like a body part is going to be structural. We already remember we should have biotic and abiotic factors down. So biotic factors is going to be living things. So we've got plants, animals, bacteria, and fungi. And remember also that dead organisms are also biotic. If they were alive at any point, they're biotic. Abiotic factors include non-living or never living. Can I spell? Non-living. So that includes things like water, light, shelter, and space. We've talked about food webs. So all of the energy is from the sun. So it's the primary source of energy, comes from the sun. Primary source of energy is from the sun. Then you have your autotroph, or your producer. These can make their own energy through photosynthesis. They're usually at the bottom of the food chain. Next, you have your herbivores, or your primary consumers. And these are heterotrophs. They have to consume other organisms for food, but they are herbivores. They only eat plants. Next, you have your secondary consumer. They eat primary consumers. Then you have your tertiary consumer. Above them, you may have like your apex predators. So these are things that nothing eats. So that would be like a bear or a human or a shark. So we already have things like herbivore over here. So something that only eats meat is a carnivore. These are usually at your secondary or tertiary consumer levels. Something that eats plant is an herbivore. Kind of rotate your paper. Something that eats plants and animals is an omnivore. Something that breaks down dead stuff is going to be a decomposer. And these guys are really important because they return nutrients to the soil. So finally, we're going to talk about biodiversity and ecological succession. So, biodiversity is where you have more species in an ecosystem, it's more sustainable, more genetic variation, stronger food chains, better survivability. So, if you have more species, then it's going to be stable and sustainable. So remember, stability is short term and sustainability is long term. Sorry, let me be focused on that. For succession, there's two main types. Primary is if it takes it down to bare rock. Secondary is if soil is remaining. So soil starts with S, secondary starts with S. So with primary, you're going to start with lichen and moss. These are your pioneer species. For secondary succession, you're going to start with weeds, grasses, shrubs. Those are your primary succession. Those are your pioneer species. So generally when we think of pioneer species, they're the first species to come in. I'm supposed to say primary succession. The lichen and moss have to break down the rock to make soil in primary succession. And then all ecological succession ends in a climax community. All right, so this should be the whole paper filled out.